Okay. Looks like it's being live streamed now, though. Thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to go over the agenda real quick, and then we will look at our minutes from last meeting. We'll give you a second to peruse those minutes. You got those on an email yesterday from Lisa White. We will then open it up for any amendments or any changes to those minutes and see if we can get some form of them approved. And then we're going to jump into breakout sessions. So the agenda tonight, like I said, we will do our minutes here momentarily. We'll have a breakout conversation number 1 in your groups. We will come back. We will report out. Okay. We will have then a breakout conversation number 2. And for each of those breakout conversations, I will put the driving questions in the chat. So I will speak them to you here as facilitator, but then I'll copy and paste them and put them in the chat. So you'll have the verbiage of what the focus of the conversation will be in the chat. Then we'll have a breakout conversation number 2. Like I said, we'll come back from that. We'll hear report outs from all of our groups. We'll take a break, about a 15-minute break. We will come back from that and we will have a breakout conversation number 3. We have 3 breakout conversations planned for you tonight. We'll come back from that and report out. And then at that point, we'll see if there's any large group discussion or any motions that may want to be made by the group. The one thing that we will need to do, though, is at 7:45 tonight, or earlier if we're done earlier, but by 7:45, we will need to go over. We've put 15 minutes aside at the end of the meeting, as there were some questions for more clarity around some of the metrics and the numbers on the capital levy, and we want to make sure that we go over that before the end of the meeting tonight. I do want to tell you before we jump into breakouts and minutes and whatnot, the real focus of the lion's share of this meeting tonight, though, is going to be on that EP&O levy. We really want to dig deep into that and have you getting into deep conversations around that EP&O levy. And then we'll see where that takes us. And like I said, we have 3 breakout sessions planned for that. So before we jump into all of those, let's get into the piece with our minutes. I know that that Lisa White emailed all of the minutes to you yesterday. If you could take just a minute or 2, I'll put my own stopwatch here on for 2 minutes. If you haven't already looked at those minutes, take a peek at those real quick, and I'll bring you back in about 2 minutes. And we will see if there's a motion on the floor for any changes, amendments, or any questions on the minutes. So just take 2 minutes for that, and I'll get my stopwatch started right now. Okay, we're about a minute and a half in. If you, anyone from the committee, any motions, changes, questions, amendments to the minutes?
I did notice one thing I'd like to throw out. I think we have a grammatical correction on page 2, 3rd paragraph. Says $53 million budget should be 353. So I think we need to correct that.
And where is that specifically, Martin? That's on paragraph 3?
Page 2, 3rd paragraph.
And change 53 to 353.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Anything else that anyone sees there? And you can either raise your hand on your virtually and I can call on you, or you can motion me in your video camera wildly and I'll make sure that I call on you as well. But probably the easiest way is on the is to raise your hand virtually and I'll make sure that I get you. Any other changes, amendments, questions on the minutes? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion on the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay. Do we have a second to accept, to approve the minutes as amended?
Second.
Seconded.
All right, any conversation on that? I'll give a few seconds. Let me know if you'd like to have a conversation on that. Okay, Stephen, we're going to test your voting buttons here. So we will take a vote to approve the minutes as amended, and that one amendment would be changing 53 to 353 on page 2 of paragraph 3. Voting members, vote whenever you're ready. Remember, if you are a technical team member, please don't vote. Thank you so much. All right, we have 36 votes so far to approve out of 37. So nice work on that. Those minutes from last meeting as amended with that metric there on the other page will pass. And I do see that Carista, I believe, Carista Smith-Barney, have you just joined us?
No, she just actually texted, she's on the phone. Her mom's in the hospital, so
Okay.
She'll be late.
Okay, so sorry to hear that. I will keep an eye on the participants as well. If as I think that there's about 4 folks that could join us tonight, so I'll keep an eye on that because that will tweak our threshold a little bit with our quorum. So if Chris is going to join us later, also if Janet Kelly, Carrie Hipsher, or Heather Barker come into the group, let me know as well. And we will continue forward. So before we jump into breakout groups, I know that Martin wanted to touch base on one thing before we did that. Martin, take it away.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen briefly. I did want to mention thank the committee for the input on the electric buses and suggestion of pursuing the grants. We are looking at our first potential grant, and we're going to apply for this beginning January 25th. There's an application period through March. It would potentially allow us to get the cost differential between up to 3 buses between what a diesel costs and an electric costs. So there's also some infrastructure money involved. So we're excited to put that together, and just wanted to make sure that you're all aware that we're out there pursuing those grants. So thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Okay. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting, really what our focus was going to be was to now have you talking amongst yourselves in both the smaller and the larger groups. So let's jump into our breakout conversation number 1. And as I want to make sure I get that verbiage in there so you can see it as well. I'm copying and pasting as I'm speaking here. Breakout conversation number 1. You are all representatives of either a school or a part of our community or a stakeholder group out in our community. So breakout conversation number 1. You've been on this committee for about 6 weeks now. 2 of those weeks, obviously, we were on winter break, but you've had 2 meetings. What are you hearing in your communities regarding the springboards, the tax rates, etc.? As a representative from your school or stakeholder group, if you are hearing things over the past few weeks since we last met or during the time that we've been meeting, please share those in your groups, what you are hearing from your stakeholder groups in your communities based on the work that we're doing. That's going to be our first breakout conversation. And let's go 10 minutes on this one, Stephen, and why don't you push folks into groups?
Dr.
Jeff, hang on, buddy. I don't know why you didn't sort properly.
That's all right. All right.
You're number 6. Here you go.
All right. Thanks.
All right, now I'm orphaned. I gotta get back to my breakout room. Guess I just fly in there. Room 7.
Steven, we're just back because we were done.
Okay. I think I was the only one in here, so you get to hang out with me.
Sounds good. I'm gonna turn my camera off while we wait.
No problem.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you, Stephen. So let's do some report outs here. And I don't know if your group has a spokesperson, but let's go backwards here. Group number 6. Actually, before we get going, I want to make sure. Janet Kelly, are you here tonight? I believe that you are. Janet?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you. Thanks, Janet. So
Okay,
now our quorum
Sorry, yeah.
is set at 38. We have 38 voting members, so we have a threshold of 29. And I think Carista might be joining us here in a little while, so I'll make sure we keep an eye on that and adjust our quorum and threshold as needed. So let's start with group number 6. That was Rachel Cox, Janet Kelly, Christy Hammond, Jonathan Kosher, Jeff McGowan, Lauren Bartholomew, and Laura Berry. Would somebody from that group want to kind of talk about, share out what your group talked about?
We have a designated spokesperson. They're being shy.
I was designated the designated spokesperson.
All right, Lauren, take it away.
Yeah. So the most of what we talked about really had to do with the capital levy and we talked about this before. The confusion is why we're looking for more money for a school that hasn't been built yet. So really an explanation of where the $78 million is going. There was talk about, which I think is a great idea, kind of talking about what bonds have covered in the past, what this last bond covered, and where, so to kind of show people what has actually been accomplished, and then where we're the state of affairs now and where we need to get to complete the things we have promised to complete. But I think that reminder of what has happened does help people push forward too in that. We shortly talked EP&O just a bit about the same type of things we've been talking about, the special education. Always lots of questions about why we're spending that money, where it's going, and why the federal and state government money isn't covering those costs that as a community we feel should be covered.
Gotcha.
Did I get everything, Jonathan? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Group 5, which is Janelle Washington, Jen Kessler, Tony Hunter, Caitlin Schreiber, John Gardner, Scott McCorkle. Spokesperson from that group, step up. Whoever would like to go.
I'm happy to go. We talked about just kind of general feelings of maybe frustration, feelings that maybe the levy wouldn't pass, but at the same time, thinking that our community is so committed to schools and to our district that in the end that they should come through, kind of that feeling that, yeah, there might be kind of this angst, but really when it comes to the ballot box or the voting envelope that they will be voting to approve. Frustration with the high schools too. And then the school or the district employees in our group were saying like, I don't know if I hear it. So it's really hard for me to say. But there's kind of, I would say also just a lot of talk about the buses and about the need for making it better, however it can be done.
And when you said frustration with the high school, Caitlin, I'm assuming you were talking about the Capitol and high school for.
Yeah. Frustration about the high school not being built yet. And especially those that helped pass the previous bond for it to be built and have been waiting for it to open.
Okay, thank you. Group number 4, Laura Nye, AJ Taylor, Laura Burnett, Karen Marie Harper, Erica Stevens, Michelle Caponegro, Sean Martin, Martin Buckley. Who would like to represent that group?
Josh, I took some notes. We had in our group conversation about very similar topics to what other groups have talked about already. Concern over the increase in taxes for people hearing from neighbors, the concern about being priced out of their house as the value goes up and their tax also goes up. Some frustration people have heard around, we're giving this money, what's it going for? Is it being effectively used? The gap between what we perceive we're spending and what we see that we're getting. Some concerns around transparency with construction projects, just ensuring that the district's providing a transparent construction information to the community via the website, that seems to maybe have diminished over time. And we also talked about the same, very similar concern I've heard in other groups around bonds are for building and levies are for learning. And yet here we're talking about a levy that incorporates construction and building costs. And so just the need for additional communication and clarity to the community about, you know, what's happening there, what's that about? So a very productive conversation for our group.
Thank you, Michelle. Let's go to group 3. Niger Suleiman, Shannon Mayo, Rachel Lafont, Carrie Hipsher, Leanne Tupou, Chris Bruno, Joe Stanley. Whoever the rep for that group would like to report out, take it away.
We failed to identify a speaker, sorry. Consensus, we are all from kind of the Central Corridor region representing our areas. No feedback from our constituents regarding levies right now, kind of lost amongst the noise of a lot of other things going on in buildings.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Let's go over to group 2. Nicole Jacobs, Claudia Huzar, Meg Iyer, Kathy Keegan, Aaron Conley, Don Peschik. Whoever would like to be the spokesperson for that group.
I volunteered. We said a lot of some similar things. We're concerned about those people that are not happy with the district, that they're going to be taking it out on our students if this isn't passed. We're concerned that the people that are passionate about this know about it, but for those groups, because of everything that's going on, people are disconnected. They're not, you know, together, that the word isn't traveling. But then on the other hand, it's hard to spread the word about what we should be voting on when we don't know what we're voting for yet. There was the point that in the past several levies and bonds, we've pushed that 70% of the people that vote in these are people that don't have students, and we rely on those votes, particularly the votes at Providence Point. We also, the capital projects, the 44 million for the new high school, we think is going to be hard to sell. But we also acknowledge that our high schools are bursting at the seams, and that's limiting opportunities for students. And then lastly, the fear from staffs throughout the district that if this doesn't happen, how it's going to impact the staffing and all the great things that are happening in our schools. And
there's your cat, Kathy. And so that last piece though that you talked about, you know, the impact on staffing, that was based on your group talking about the EP&O at the end there, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see here. Final group number 1: Lisa Reeder, Heather Barker, Courtney Eldridge, Carissa Smith Barney, Jane Harris, Ashley Landis, and Dana Rundle. Whoever the spokesperson for that group is.
Go ahead, Courtney. Do you want to, or do you want me to?
Go for it.
I think everything we talked about was pretty much said already. Some interest in technology in the elementary schools is positive. Some concerns with the one-to-one, concern with the kind of inequities throughout the elementary schools, really all schools in our district. Some schools were already set up with more technology than others, and how do we get that equal? And concern with the transparency of where the money has gone from the previous bond. Yeah, I mean, we mainly talked about the capital levy and not the EP&O.
Okay. Well, that definitely seemed to be a theme in every single one of the groups, which will set us up, I think, and I'm taking a peek at the chat. I see Dawn put in the chat. I'd like to know if that 70% number is quoted is accurate of people living in the district that do not have students in the schools. Lisa White, if you could get that down, we'll definitely want to make sure that we get our most accurate number on that piece as well. I don't have that right off the top of my head. I know that it's kind of hovered around that in the past, but we will, between now and the next meeting, do a little bit of homework on that and bring that piece back to the group. Let's jump in now And really what we had planned to do, the technical team, when we met, was we wanted to start out with our first breakout conversation to give folks an opportunity just to talk like you just did. What are you hearing out in your communities, schools, stakeholder groups? And we just went through that. But really what our goal for the rest of this meeting is going to be is we're going to dive into the EP&O. And we are going to have some breakout conversations on the EP&O. And we will see after those breakout conversations in the larger group, we will see where we are. If there are motions that are made tonight, for example, and this group were able to settle on a recommendation, not saying that you would, but if you did, we would then be able to dedicate the remainder of our time as a group on the capital levy. And I know that there's a lot of questions on that, but at the same time, the technical team felt that if we can focus our energy, obviously we focused some energy on the transportation at the beginning, but we did feel that there was some steam, positive steam around the EP&O, that maybe we could involve you in some conversations around that. And then we can see where that takes us. But that we would make that a priority for tonight. So let's jump into our breakout conversation number 2. And before I go over that and drop that in the chat, as we talked in our technical team, we wanted to do kind of a piece before we jumped into that, because we had heard some things the first 2 meetings and we wanted to clarify them a little bit. So we wanted to touch on something that's come up. Remember, the EP&O levy represents roughly 14% of the annual district budget. Okay, that means that roughly 86% of the district budget comes out of the general budget. That's the money that we get from the state and the federal government. That's about 86% of all of our yearly expenditures. You're not going to see things like teaching math or teaching social studies in the EP&O list, because those are things that are mandated by the state. We have to do them. The question was asked a few times, for example, 2 meetings ago about dyslexia and why they didn't see that on the EP&O levy. I want you to know that addressing dyslexia through screening of K-2 students, support for students, professional development for teachers, all of that is mandated by the state. We have to do that. That's a state requirement. And all of that work is being handled by our Teaching and Learning Services Department. And that's funded through our general budget. So for example, if a levy were to fail, and I hate to think about if that were to ever happen, but if it did, we are still focusing on dyslexia and meeting our obligations to the state around what we need to do. However, in that EP&O levy, there are enhancements there that allow us to do more around our dyslexia work in the district. So in our technical team meeting earlier this week, I was going to ask Diana Eggers, who's in our Teaching and Learning Department as our Director of Educational Technology, and she's on the technical team, just to talk a little bit about, even though those things aren't spelled out with maybe the word dyslexia, how we are supporting and enhancing our dyslexia work through the EP&O levy past what we're doing just in the Teaching and Learning Services Department through the general budget. So Diana, I don't know if you wanted to give just a couple of points on that.
Sure. I mean, there's about 3 line items specifically in that EP&O list in the notebook that while it doesn't say dyslexia, we are using resources from those line items to further support the dyslexia work. So if you look at the instructional coaches, those are elementary instructional coaches. They help us administer professional development with teachers. We have a non-student day coming up. They're leading some of those non-student days. And that work at the end of January is focused on our multi-tiered systems of support. We wouldn't really be able to do it to the level we're doing it if we didn't have those instructional coaches. So that's one line item, and it's a big line item. But in addition to those folks providing professional development, they also go in and support teachers instructionally. So we've got that line item. We've also got the additional days for teachers. So those, I believe there's 2 line items there. There's the additional days for teachers. That's some of those days in August, where teachers come back prior to the start of school. And then there's the additional responsibilities piece in there. And that also pulls out and calls out those non-student days the 8-hour Wednesdays. And it's those times, the non-student days, the days before school starts, the Wednesdays, those are all of the times that we have as leaders in the district to work with our teachers to implement new laws, such as the dyslexia law, to beef up our instruction. And so that those 3 items are key to much of what we do in the district, and they support a lot of what we're mandated to do, and also funded through the general fund.
Thank you, Diana. So as we jump into our breakout room conversation number 2, and we'll go a little bit longer on this one. We'll go 15 minutes, Stephen, when you set that timer. This conversation will focus solely on the EP&O Springboard ballot measure. In your groups, discuss the reasonableness of the Springboard proposal for the EP&O levy. Is there anything in that Springboard that is keeping you from supporting levy dollars to enhance district initiatives in these areas? If so, if there are some things that you don't think are reasonable, what items do you feel are unreasonable? So really focus your conversations in breakout session number 2 on the EP&O levy. And remember, you can see all of that stuff if you go to your binder, go to the EP&O tab, and it's further back there. That's the slide deck that Martin went through, and it's got all of that data on it, as well as that slide about what the EP&O levy has paid for in the past and what it would, a replacement levy on the Springboard, what it would be focused towards now. So one more time, we're going to push you into breakout conversations number 2, focus on the EP&O Springboard ballot measure, talk about the reasonableness of the Springboard proposal. Is there anything in that Springboard that's keeping you from supporting levy dollars to enhance those things? If so, what are those things? So Stephen, if we can push folks into those groups, that would be great. All right, welcome back, everyone. Carista, are you with us? Okay, still no Carissa. So just, just as we go along this process, still 38 folks who are with us with a voting threshold of 29. So as folks add to the group each meeting, I'll make sure that I update that with all of you. I hope that you had some robust conversations in your groups. Let's report out on those and kind of see how they went. We'll start from the bottom again. And I want to just be clear on that, the bottom, because the bottom of my list here, I by no means want to make any judgment statements on any of our groups. You're all fabulous. So group number 6, Lauren Bartholomew, what did you guys talk about?
So
Janet's
Lauren,
Janet's gonna talk for us.
Okay, Janet.
Yeah, we'll represent the bottom here. So we were generally feeling okay about where the EP&O levy recommendation was at. We think that this levy really speaks to our values as a community for the additional enrichments that we want for our students and the teachers and the community at large. None of us knew the exact process or the suggestion for how to make maybe an additional recommendation as the levy is considered to the district, but we talked about adding some accountability metrics because we think that it would help ensure that we're sort of on the right track when it comes to this list of enrichments. Maybe some key performance indicators to really assess, from the dyslexia to all of the things that this funds, like how we're doing as a district as compared either to, statewide metrics. But we thought that would be compelling, both from a going forward voting on levies, but also just for the district to have that. And maybe it's already done, but to the extent that it's not, we thought both from like the voting perspective of getting voters to support the levy, but also just a good practice that would be something to consider as a recommendation.
Gotcha. Thank you, Janet. Great feedback from group number 6, and we can come back to this later, but our monitoring reports that are done at school board meetings measure just about all of this stuff, but I hear exactly what you're saying, which is whatever form of the EP&O might go on the ballot, that I hear you saying it would be very important for the district to be able to probably share those metrics and the progress that has been made in those areas, so people know that they're voting for things that are making a difference. That's what I took from your group there. Okay, thank you very much. Group number 5, I don't know if Caitlin wants to speak or if somebody else does, but whoever wants to represent group 5.
I'd love to defer to some of the educators because we had a lot of questions. I think we like what's listed and see that these are all really important items in our budget. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else.
I think that we acknowledged that there were some updated notes on the right-hand side as far as the list goes of what each of these things really means. And we just were discussing how to ensure that as non-educators, as people who don't live in this world, when they look at that list, they can really see where the money is going to, because it's a lot of, I think one of my team members said, educationese. And so just making sure that it's really understandable by people who aren't in education, so that when they read that list, they can say, oh, you know what, actually my student has access to that resource, and I understand what that means and the impact that it has.
So I almost heard that from group number 5, similar to group number 6, is that whatever iteration of a ballot measure on the EP&O is out there, the importance of in the marketing of that is to be real specific and not to speak as much maybe educationese, which I've heard that term a lot, and I know what you're talking about, but to try to put those items in terms that most everybody could understand when they saw it. So did I get that right, group 5?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go to group 4. Michelle Caponegro, you shared the first time, don't have to share the second time, but spokesperson from group 4.
You get me this time. So very similar comments. We did get some great feedback from the educators in our group. Broadly supportive of this levy. The conversation was really around storytelling and basically making sure that this does land well as it goes on the ballot. And then we had a longer conversation about adding things, removing things, what the role of this committee is, and how the community at large and the school district can really get ahead of the curve for the next round of levies so that folk are aware of how to basically contribute to this. So a lot of conversation, and I think a lot of frustration on what does the committee actually do here. I remember my first time round, the springboard's here for a reason. It's it's put together by the experts, the educators and the admin, not by lay people who just make up numbers. So folk who really wanted to get involved in that early should be engaging, and I think the school district would do well to do a little bit more outreach on that side. But again, I think the number one comment on this was really around, removing the technical jargon and really explaining where the money goes and the benefits it's bringing to both our children, but also to our educators as well.
All right. Thank you, Martin. And let's go to group number 3. And the first time around it was Rachel. So Rachel or someone else from group 3.
I took notes, so I can do it again. Overall, our group feels strongly that we support the EP&O package overall. To drill down, the one area that we do believe the community is looking for and could use more funding and more clarity is around mental health supports. I think every building is feeling the impact of reductions in deans, counselors, so is this money in here, is it maintaining the current status quo? Is it putting us back to where we were a year ago? Ideally, we would like to see this number improved, but at the same time, we could not find an area that we would cut to make that possible. So I guess to the earlier point, there has been thought around why these numbers are the way they are. So just knowing that, when you're reaching out to the community, mental health and technology are probably the 2 big drivers that we thought would be meaningful. And then I think we have an opportunity in terms of the marketing. It's natural to compare ourselves to other districts. So while it seems like we're scraping for things to keep up, the programs that we value, how are other districts pulling it off, and why do they not seem to be struggling as much to fund some of these same things? And maybe they are, but messaging around maybe why Issaquah has to fund these things differently compared to our apples to apples districts would be helpful. I think we got caught off in that part of the conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. And group 1, Dana, you shared, you don't have to, but someone from group 1.
I'm going to. So I think largely we're on the same page where holistically we don't have any issues with the money, but we really feel like in the community there, for whatever reason, there's a lack of trust with the school district right now. And so being as transparent as possible, kind of to what Martin was saying, where we really need to spell these out, in particular, the 2 most expensive line items, which we kind of bucketed together, the additional teacher work days and the additional teacher responsibility outside of basic education. It's $15 million. And I had heard people didn't understand, like, wait, what are we paying for? What are 8-hour Wednesdays? Like they don't understand that. And so I think it's really spelling out the benefit to the community for these items and giving more detail rather than less. And people can choose to read it or not. But it's something, to gain the trust back of the community is really showing them where the money is going, especially when they're really not going to understand the capital levy and why that is happening. To get this levy, the EP&O levy passed through, the more detail, the better. So it looks like we're being as transparent as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I skipped over a group, not intentionally, just lots of groups out there. Group number 2, Kathy Keegan, you were the spokesperson the first time. Whoever wants to speak from that group, take it away.
I will go because I don't think we agreed who was going to do it this time. Similar to what everybody says, it's the educating people about what these things are, and then letting them also know that what they will be, those things that they care about will be going away, such as the mental health and the technology. And we also said we need to focus on the fact that it's not a brand new additional tax. It's a renewal of an existing one. So hearing that word renewal or replacement, that it's not an additional something that they haven't been paying for.
Okay. Okay. Well, we are at 6:44 right now, and what I had hoped to do was to be able to take our break from 6:45 to 7. That gives our committee members an opportunity to take a break, come back at 7 o'clock. The technical team is going to go into a breakout room and talk about how we're going to structure our breakout conversation number 3. And still leave us that 15 minutes at the end of the meeting to go over some of the capital projects, capital levy stuff that we had that we need to 15 minutes to do at the end of the meeting tonight. So how about we take a 15-minute break if you are a committee member back here at 7 p.m. In 15 minutes. And then Stephen, if you can push our technical team into a breakout room, that would be great. See everybody else in 15. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully everybody had a nice break. 7 o'clock, so we have 1 hour left. We do have one breakout session planned left. We also have time after that to not only report out, but to have larger group conversations. And then, like I said, we do have a hard stop from 7:45 to 8 because we must get to the capital projects, the capital levy document that we need to share this meeting. But without further ado, let's jump back in. So the technical team chatted. Oh, before I do that, I just want to make sure I update my quorum here. Carista, were you able to join us? If you're out there, let me know. Okay, so we are still at 38 voting members who are here tonight. So we have a threshold of 29. I just want to keep letting folks know that we still are at 38 members. So as the technical team chatted about our last few breakout sessions, we did hear a theme. We heard from really most of the groups that there was a lot of momentum and good thoughts on the EPNO levy, but that the main questions and concerns that the group seemed to have, the theme was around the presentation to the community on what that would look like, the importance of, for example, maybe using data to show the growth that we've made in that this is a renewal EPNO levy in these different areas, breaking down those items in the EPNO. So they're very easily understood by the community member and by the voter. The importance of the storytelling. I think Martin used that word that we talked about in our technical team piece. Our executive director of communications is on our technical team, Alicia Ingalls, and she was involved in our conversation quite a bit. Before we go to breakout 3, when we were talking about, that storytelling, that presentation to the community around the EPNO and the things that are in it. What were some of your thoughts on that, Alicia?
Sure. So some of the items that we specifically addressed in the technical team as it relates to this are some of the initiatives and efforts the district's making collectively in order to make sure that the community is receiving the facts. Well, as a communications department, we can't do like a pro campaign like this can. We have to be more neutral. There are important things for us to communicate as far as facts go. Some of you might be aware and got reached out to by the survey that we started last night. That survey that runs through next week is a way for us to gain public perceptions about how the Issaquah School District is doing. In addition, we will be certain to lay out the facts as far as how programs are performing and how successful they are. And in addition, there's you've probably seen in the past, newsletters, videos, those types of items where the focus is really on sharing the facts and the information with the community. And some of you might also be aware there are some new restrictions too in place for us as a communications department when putting this on the ballot, where we actually have to provide a pro and a con statement as a district in order to have further transparency with the community as well. So I think those were a few kind of high-level topics that we discussed as a group, but just kind of giving assurance that those are topics that are on our minds as a department and things that we're being intentional about ensuring that the community is aware of. Josh, was that?
Yeah, that was great. I'm just
Okay.
kind of taking a peek at the chat here. Gotcha. Okay, so let's get to our final breakout session. This one will be about, we're going to go 10 minutes on this one. And let me drop it in the chat here. Paste.
Do we have a raised hand? Did I see?
Let me see here. Dana.
I can wait till, I didn't know what your breakout session was. I was going to make a motion, but I can wait till after the breakout if you would like.
Okay, so I'm going to press return on my paste here, which is final breakout conversation here. In your groups, talk about what your group could support as far as a recommendation for the EPNO package. After talking, do you feel like your group is ready to make a motion? If not, why not? Is there more dialogue that we need to have? So we're going to go 10 minutes on this one, a little bit shorter, but we really want to find out, is there what could your group support as far as an EP&O motion? If you're not ready to do that right now, if we need to flush more out, if we need to have more dialogue, then talk about that too. We want to make sure that we give time to do that. So 10 minutes in breakout 3. Stephen, if you could send them there and bring us back at about 7:16.
Anyone else have any comments on that?
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Just for quorum purposes, Peter O'Donoghue, did I hear that you were able to join the Zoom? Are you out there?
I have joined. Thank you. I apologize for, I've been on a plane for the last hour.
No worries, no worries.
But now I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. So just to be clear, folks, we are now at 39 as our quorum, which means that the threshold would be a vote of 30. So I know I sound like a broken record, but I want to keep mentioning that. So as we have folks who come in later to the meeting, that we get that updated so everybody knows that the numbers that we are looking for. Okay, so let's report out from our groups. Actually, one more thing. I did want, there was something in the chat that I wanted to mention that I believe it was from Joe. If possible, it would be great to have future breakout session questions on the meeting agenda so we have some time to develop our thoughts. We can absolutely do that to the best of our ability, Joe. So we made that note moving into our next couple of meetings. So thank you for that in the chat. And then, okay, good. I think Erica was able to answer that. Thank you. Okay, let's start with group number 1, which was Lisa, Heather, Courtney, Carista, Jane, Ashley, Dana. How did that conversation go?
We are ready to make a motion and have all future discussion be part of that, if that is reasonable.
Okay.
Can I do that, or would you rather have all the groups?
You know, why don't we hold on that just for a second, because I want to give the groups a chance to go through in case there was something that there was a group that thought we didn't flush out. So hold on to that, Dana. I'm going to come back to you. Group number 2, Nicole, Claudia, Meg, Kathy, Aaron, Dawn.
I'll take the lead this time. So poor Kathy can have a little break. We also are supportive of moving forward with the motion. Obviously, I think there are things that we'd like to see more money spent on, specifically mental health, but we also understand that there's a cap this year. So we are fully supportive of moving forward with the motion.
Okay, thank you. Group 3, Nijar, Shannon, Rachel, Carrie, Leanne, Chris, Joe. What feedback from your group?
And I'm taking it this time, so timely that I'm following Aaron, because our team said that we would have consensus as well, but really wanted to make a final push for the counseling and mental health. And want to give a few bullet points why. So the length of what we know, the recovery for our community, the trauma that we know all of our students have experienced with COVID, the substance abuse being up, anxiety and depression being up. We'd really like to see that line item funded to at least what it was prior to the RIF.
Okay. Group 4, which is Laura, AJ, Laura, Cara Marie, Erica, Michelle, Sean, Martin.
Who wants to go? Yeah, we had a discussion. I think broadly we're all supportive. I think the main conversation we had was really more about the messaging and storytelling about the viability of the levy as is, and the fact that there's probably a lot of angst in the community and the tax base about COVID, people being out of school, return to school, and general dissatisfaction to a certain degree with the school district, and whether that's going to give us any blowback on trying to get a levy passed.
Thanks, Martin. Group 5, Janelle, Jen, Tony, Peter, Caitlin, John, and Scott.
I'll report out this time. We had the same thoughts that other groups did, that there was nothing that we couldn't support, and appreciated the details of being able to know more of what each line item meant. And we were able to bring Peter up to speed a little bit on what we had talked about in the first couple of breakout rooms.
Thank you, Jen. And group 6, Rachel, Janet, Christy, Jonathan, Jeff, Lauren, Laura.
Hi. Yeah, I think we're in the same place too. We came to consensus that we feel good about it. The one thing I would like to leave out there is it took a lot of time for this group to get to this space and realizing that we had a lot of access to information. So how will that translate? You know, we've talked about this, the marketing, everything else, but we really have had a lot of information to sit with and time and making sure that the community gets a similar experience to get a similar result.
Gotcha. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, I don't think I missed a group this time. Kathy Keegan did not have to text me, so that's good. Dana Rundle, I know that you had wanted to make a motion. I don't know if that is still something that you would like to do, but if so, the floor is yours.
I would like to make a motion, move that we approve the EP&O levy as presented with a note or emphasis to Superintendent Thiele and the school board that we would also like a little more attention given to mental health and counseling if possible in the future.
Second. Can I ask a question? Can we make
Yeah,
a
well,
simultaneous motion?
Yeah, is that Peter? Is that who I hear?
Yes, I have a question. So if a motion has been on the table and if it's seconded, and that goes to a vote, that would be making a recommendation. What if we have other motions that we would like to make with regard to the EP&O? How do we get those motions on the table prior to a motion on the table to vote on the recommendation?
Well, another thing that folks could do, because typically what we do, if there's a motion on the table and if it's seconded, then we would have a discussion on it. And then during that discussion, and this has happened many times in other levy and bond committees and reboundaries that we've done, is that there are amendments to that motion. And then if there's an amendment to that motion, we would discuss that as well. And then we would allow for that discussion really until the facilitators, which are Martin and myself, felt like folks had spoken enough and that they had gotten everything out that they wanted to say. And then we would take a vote at that point. So typically
Great.
that's
So
how we've done it. Does that make sense, Peter?
It does, and I appreciate that. I will push back a little bit because you did call on one person specifically, and they have now made a motion to approve it. I would hope that there would be a motion to amend the actual, so not as a function of the approval amendment, but actually making amendments to modify our recommendation. It seems,
Josh, as I understand it, if Peter has an amendment that he'd like to make, he can go ahead and make it during this discussion. And then we would vote on the amendment. If the amendment passed, then the motion would be changed, and then we would vote on the motion. Is that correct?
Yes, that's typically how we've done it. Peter, I still see your hand up. Did you get everything out that you wanted to say? I've got somebody else in the queue, but I don't want to move to them until you got your piece out.
yeah, I will end by saying that you're saying we have to act on the motion to approve. We cannot stop and act on other potential motions that may come up that would change the recommendation. That's what I heard you say. Okay, thank you.
And also remember, at the very end of this process, we will vote on the entire package. If, for example, let's say we did have an entire package of 3 different measures, we would vote on the entire package then. So there's also another opportunity to revisit at that point if we needed to. Meg, I think that you were next in line, and then Dawn after that. So Meg.
Yeah, so I had a question as part of the discussion. I'm representing Pine Lake Middle School because I have 2 kids there. I also work in a high school as a school psychologist, and I'm firsthand witnessing the mental health crisis in our schools. Is this levy the only way that we could fund mental health? I know our job here is the levy, but are there grants? Are they looking at it in the budget? If we're not able to make more space because we obviously don't want to take away a different program potentially, what does that mean for mental health? Are there other avenues where we could try to pursue more funding for that?
Yeah, and Martin, you can probably talk about that as well. One thing that I will say is, and many people on this call know this, the Issaquah School District, like a lot of school districts across America, the past 2 years, we've had a decline in enrollment. That's probably not not a secret to a lot of folks. But when our enrollment goes up, the amount of money that comes into the system increases as well. Not only when that happens, do we put more money into classrooms to keep our class sizes consistent, but it also brings in more money for other things as well. So that's one that's one way that more money comes into the system, is that when you gain an enrollment. Another way that money can come into the system, at least from a one-time shot, is through things like ESSER dollars. I won't get into that. That was the money from the government for COVID relief. They based it this past year on a district's free and reduced lunch count. So there were a very small few districts in the state of Washington that got a lot less money. We were one of those. But there is talk that there could possibly be additional money from the state for COVID relief this year. That's up to legislators. The district doesn't make those decisions. But Martin, being the a deputy superintendent and former math teacher and high school and middle school principal, I'm going to turn it over to the finance person, and you can talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, you hit on some of it, and I know that if I'm not mistaken, the governor's budget that he recently put out had some funding for mental health counseling, which I believe also will be taken up by legislature, and they will be looking at the possibility of passing something that would increase funding for schools. So we're hopeful in that regard, and we'll be tracking that pretty closely as well.
Okay, and Dawn Pesich, you had your hand up. I think you're next in the queue.
What'd you call me?
Dawn Pesich?
There we go. Hey, I was just going to say, because Peter got here late, the reason that you called on Dana, it was right before Peter got here. It's because Dana had already raised her hand and tried to make a motion. So you just went, I don't know if Peter probably didn't know that, but you weren't calling her because she was a ringer in the audience. She actually made a motion before. I just want to make sure Peter knew that.
Okay, Peter, I still see your hand up. Did you? Oh, no, it just went down. Okay, so we have a motion on the, and Dana, I want to go back and just because I'm scribbling down in my notes here. I want to make sure that I got your verbiage correct in the motion that you made that was seconded, which was to approve the EP&O levy as presented with a recommendation to the superintendent that the committee believes puts high importance on funding for counseling and mental health. I don't think I got that right, but if you can give me your verbiage, because I want to get it right.
That is close enough.
Okay. Okay, more conversation. And again, you can raise your hand virtually and I'll call. Oh, I see Erica, hand up. You're ready to, you're up.
No, my hand is not up. I was just saying I agreed with Dana.
Okay, gotcha. More conversation on that. Again, we have a motion on the floor to approve the EP&O levy as presented with a additional recommendation to the superintendent that it is of high priority to the committee to continue to fund counseling and mental health services to the level that they were at pre-pandemic. I think that that's what I heard. Okay, I see a nod there. Okay, and when we get to the place, if and when we do take a vote, I will make sure that we get this verbiage in the voting piece, so you know exactly what folks will be voting for. Meg, I see a hand up.
I was just going to say, I don't think the pre-pandemic part was in there. I would venture to say we would need it more than what was there before, because students have lived through trauma, more trauma than normal.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that when if and when we do take a vote, that I have that. So I'll take the pre-pandemic out, but I want to make sure that I get the verbiage right to capture what the motion was. As we continue to kind of play around with that verbiage, Peter, I see your hand up. You're up.
Sorry. Nope, I was double muted. Classic. Yeah, my point is there are two things that came up in our group and two things that I've gotten a bunch of feedback from the community on that I would potentially like to see amended in the EP&O. And my concern right now is we're on track to potentially approve the EP&O and make our recommendation. And I think there's a right to have those voices heard as a function of motions to actually change the EPNO. And so prior to the vote, I will raise my hand again, and I'll actually make an amendment that we table this motion to open the floor up to any motions besides approval.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity to come back to that. Cara Marie, I see a hand up. You're up. And you're still on mute.
Sorry, I was just looking at this list again, and I know we can't really add or take things away, but we could theoretically move money around. What is the $4 million for SEBB implementation?
So Seb is, sorry, somebody, so Seb, this is where we moved from when we previously had medical benefits done by the district where we would negotiate our own. The state took that over. And when they did that, there were certain things that changed, like who would be covered. So people that had certain amount of hours or anticipated hours are now covered. And so it actually increased the cost of the district to provide that.
Not look at me.
Okay. So Cara Marie, did you still have another question? Your hand was up. I didn't want to move on to the next person.
Nope, sorry, I'll take it down.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next, don't see a hand in the air. Now, Peter, you had mentioned that you wanted to make an amendment to the motion that was on the table and seconded. So in that, I don't see any other hands in the air. I don't want to skip over that, so I'll come back to you.
Perfect. I'd like to, and I don't know the format, but I'd like to make an amendment that we table this motion and open the floor up to any motions that are towards amending the EPNO prior to making a motion to approve it. Because there was not an opportunity for any potential motions to amend. So I'm making a motion inside a motion to table this motion.
Can't he just motion what he wants to amend with right now? Isn't that
Yes.
typically how it works?
You can just make an amendment to this motion.
Oh.
Propose an amendment to this motion, I mean.
And
Okay,
Peter,
so
I'm not trying to bag on you personally on this, but I think I mean, I don't really know the rules, but it seems interesting that someone can miss like the first hour of the meeting and then come through with thoughts not having heard the original discussion. That's blanketed for anybody, not just Peter.
But if Peter has an amendment, he can make that amendment. What would you like to amend, Peter?
So I had the amendment down to table the current motion and open.
You don't
the
need to do
floor.
that. You don't
What's
need
that?
to do that. You don't need to do that.
Yeah,
Just
I'll withdraw
how would you
that.
change
I'll
it?
withdraw that.
Don't need to table anything, just how would you change the amendment? How would you change the motion? Just that simple.
Correct. Thank you for that. Thanks for the clarification. My amendment would be to remove the LHS dollars for switching from block to the 7-hour period. And I would like discussion on that as a community and amongst our administrators.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I get that down correctly. Peter, your amendment would be to remove the Liberty High School switch to the 7-period day to eliminate that piece from the springboard. Did I get that correct?
Correct. And I do need it. And part of the discussion I'm going to ask is that the move away from block to 7 periods? Because it's not. That's how I assumed it is, but that has not been made clear to me.
Yeah, you assume correctly that the superintendent and the school board made that decision a few years ago. That in the fall of 2022, no sooner than the fall of 2022, that Liberty High School would go onto the same 7-period schedule that the other 2 high schools are on. So you are correct that item there would be paying for Liberty to switch to the 7-period day. So your assumption was correct. So I want to repeat again, Peter, just to make sure that I got it correctly. you have a motion to remove the item on the springboard that has the dollar amount to move Liberty High School to the 7-period block. Did I get that right?
Correct. And I hope we have an opportunity for discussion.
Okay. Is that seconded?
Looks like
It looks
seconded
like-
in the chat.
There's something in the chat.
Okay, we do have a second. So let's, a motion is on the floor to remove the Liberty High School line item to switch to the 7-period day. That's in the EP&O springboard, and it has been seconded. So we will open up for discussion on that. And it looks like Sean Martin, let's start with you, hand in the air.
Yes, so I'm the principal at Liberty, so I can speak to that. And the funding for switching to a 7-period day is actually, it's something that has been adopted by the school board as something that will happen no later than 2022. So the directive to do this is already out there, and it's not tied to this funding, but it's something we've been directed to do by the school board. And the cost involved is basically just to match us up with Skyline and Issaquah with the staff funding that is sort of goes along with going to 7 periods. The state funds to 6 periods for a high school, and to run an 8-period schedule, we've received a separate sort of supplement every year to allow us to effectively run an 8-period schedule. The 7-period schedule would also involve like a funding adjustment from what the state would actually fund us at. But this would just match us up with Skyline and Issaquah so that they would be equivalent based on our student population and FTE, so the funding for teachers and certificated staff. And so this is actually not driving Liberty towards having a different schedule. This is actually funding what we've been directed to do by the school board. Josh and Martin, am I correct in explaining that?
No, you are correct. It is bound by the board resolution to do that for that implementation.
Okay, Erica Stevens.
I just want to point out that there's $3.3 million in here for Issaquah and Skyline 7-period day. And we have to remember that the state funds a 6-period day for high school, not a 7 or even an 8-period day. So presumably to keep Liberty on an 8-period day is actually more expensive than for them to go to a 7-period day. So we're not saving any money by keeping them on an 8-period day, never mind the fact that the board has said that they need to move to a 7-period day. So that's.
Martin, do you want to chime in on that anymore? I know that this is more in your wheelhouse.
That's correct. I mean, without going back and getting exact numbers, you're absolutely right. So either way, what we do beyond what the state funds is part of this enrichment.
Okay, any other, raise your hand if there's any other discussion. Karen Marie.
Well, I just want to make sure Meg's question in the chat gets answered of what does Peter want to move this money to? Does he want to get rid of it completely? Or are we going to move that money into another category or add a new category?
Or ask for a lesser amount on the levy?
Can I answer that, or?
Sure.
Excellent. One thought that I've gotten feedback from the community is right now in the 16 elementary schools, we use parent docents for art class. Is there an opportunity to add art as an additional line item?
So am I hearing you, Peter, that you would like to amend your motion to take out the Liberty? I just want to make sure I hear you correctly. The Liberty 7-period, the Liberty switch to 7 periods, and then put that money towards elementary art docents. Is that is that what I hear you saying?
No, we're in. I'm assuming we're in the discussion phase of this. That we're not changing my original amendment. We're still in that discussion phase.
Okay.
And so, as part of that discussion, I was asked a question, and I gave an answer.
Okay. Chris Bruno, hand up.
Yeah, I was going to ask what's the reason why Mr. O'Donohue wants to do this, and I think you might have just answered it. You wanted to transfer that specific thing to a different program, an art program.
That is one of my thoughts, correct. And I've gotten some feedback. I wouldn't say a lot of feedback, but I have gotten feedback from individuals around Issaquah's investment in elementary art and additional programs. I'll leave it there.
Okay, Rachel and then Caitlin.
I have my eye on the time, and
I think you froze on us, Rachel. Well, she does. I have my eye on the time as well, and we only have a few more minutes left before we do need to switch, but I do see another hand in the air. Caitlin, you're up.
Thanks. I'll be quick. I'm just, Peter was in my group and I thought maybe, I think I know what he's trying to say. And so he was saying in his community, since his school feeds into Liberty, that a lot of parents actually prefer the 8-period day to the 7-period day. And so I think what he's trying to say is they want to stay with the 8-period day. But then what Erica brought up was that it would actually be more expensive. And so I think that's, and I'm not trying to speak for Peter, but I think that's what his question is, or what he's saying, that a lot of parents want to stick with the 8-period. And I know it's already been answered that the school board has already directed it. But I guess the question is that let's pretend like we could just keep it 8-period. Would it cost more money or would it be the same? So I think that's maybe what he's asking, and we're just not being able to hear because of where he is.
So I'll clarify without giving the exact
Thank you.
numbers. It does
Thank
cost
you.
more. It does cost more to have a 7th period as opposed to the 8. But again, part of the original point was that anything above what we provide does come out of the enrichment levy. So hopefully that helped.
Then we've got Dana, then Dawn.
Because I don't feel that we get to make that decision on 7 periods or 8 periods, the school board has already made that. I'd like to just call for the vote and move it forward, please.
Okay, and then Dawn, you had did I hear that was seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, so let's put, any more discussion on the call for vote? It's been seconded. Okay, Stephen, could you please put a motion up to remove the Liberty transition to a 7-period day from the EP&O springboard?
Yep, I'm on it right now.
There's also a hand up from Lauren E.
I just want to point out right now, Issaquah High School and Skyline students, because they have 7th period, they have flex time and nest time. However, Liberty High School, they have 8 period, so their kids don't have this flex time and nest time, which is really give their opportunity to talk to the counselor and also, help them mental health. So if you really care about, Liberty is the only high school that don't have flex and nest time for our kids.
All right, thank you, Laura. Stephen, do you have we're taking a vote right now. Do you have the buttons ready? Stephen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Sorry. And I have to type it out in order to get it into the Zoom. So it should be there. Does that look
Okay.
right? Remove the
Yep,
late
it's there.
sub period.
Okay, so we have 39 rather total members for a motion to either approve or reject. That number is 30. We are at 32 to reject. So that motion does not pass. And we did have another motion that started out that we went away from. I want to go back to Dana. Dana, would you like to continue with the original motion that you made?
I would.
Okay, and that had been seconded, and we did have discussion on that. Any other discussion on that? Stephen, can you hear me, Stephen?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, so the motion would be to approve the EP&O levy springboard as presented, and in addition, to say a recommendation to the superintendent to continue to fund, put resources towards counseling and mental health at the highest levels that are possible for the district to do so.
So approve springboard with recommendation to superintendent for additional funding towards
Counseling and mental health, and put to approve EP&O springboard as presented with a recommendation to the superintendent to fund mental health and counseling at the highest levels that the district is able to do.
EP&O springboard as submitted,
As presented.
as presented. Recommendation. Highest level of funding for mental health
And counseling.
Whoever's in charge of meeting participants, Lisa's asking if you can let Jane back in the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can let her back in, but I don't see her trying to get in. Jane, are you here? Okay, to approve EP&O springboard as presented with recommendation to the superintendent for additional, should say, highest level of funding for mental health and counseling. Some typos there, but I think folks understand what we meant by saying that, so we can clean the typos up there.
Sorry, I'm doing it on the fly.
And Jane did get back in the room.
A lot of pressure, Stephen.
give just a few, about 30 more seconds to cast your ballot. Okay, it looks like maybe we have 3 folks that did not vote. However, we do have 34 votes to approve. So out of 39, that is 87%. So that actually now it's 35. So that would be at about an 88%. So that motion passes. We will make sure that that is reflected in the minutes. Thank you, Stephen. We need about 10 minutes left. We may go 2 or 3 minutes over to go over some questions and some clarity around the capital levy. And I want to turn it over to Tom Mullins, Martin, and Diana Eggers to do that. And again, we may go a few minutes over tonight, but it won't be too many over, I hope. So Tom, Martin, take it away.
Tom Mullins with the Capital Projects Department, Director of Capital Projects here at the district. We've only got a couple minutes, so I'm going to move quickly to get some information out. I wanted to recap the 2016 bond that was passed. There was in that $533 million, there's purchase of 4 sites, rebuild of Pine Lake Middle School, construction of 4 new schools, and the addition remodel of 6 schools. Of those passed on the 2016 bond, the land has been purchased for the 4 sites. The rebuild of Pine Lake Middle School is complete. The construction of 1 new school is complete, and another is nearing completion, which is Cougar Mountain Middle. And the additional remodel of 5 schools is complete, with Beaver Lake finishing up very soon. It's in the final throes. There are 2 projects that are left, which was high school number 4 and elementary 17. The 2012 bond, all projects were completed except for Issaquah High School Stadium, and we are still, believe it or not, in permitting with the city of Issaquah, and that's expected to start this spring or summer. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood we do have to date a good track record of finishing projects. One of the other points was why the project was delayed. The high school project was delayed so much. A lot of that was taken up. We initially started the process of possessing the land in 2016, June of 2016. We ran into a lot of resistance, landmark status, a lot of court time spent in court, and different issues. We finally took what they call possession and use in June of 2019, and we took full possession in December of 2020. And there's lots of history in there of what the court challenges were. And then on to one of the questions from the last meeting was concerning construction escalation and how that happened. And one of the things to keep in mind is construction escalation, or escalation in general, is different than inflation. The most notable term for inflation is a consumer price index, which is different than construction or escalation. Escalation deals a lot more with supply-demand imbalances, cost of labor, ability of labor, amount of construction in a particular region, jurisdictional requirements, availability of materials, and other things. I provided in your packet this construction cost escalation calculator. Construction escalation is done on a compounding basis year after year. There are three major regional, well, there's actually three national indexes that are used for calculating construction escalation. They all three, one of them is a large engineering and estimating firm. ENR is the engineering news record, and Mortensen is a construction company. They each measure different things related to construction escalation. Therefore, we chose, and which most firms do, choose to use a average of the three. 2018, you can see, was at 5.11% construction escalation. 2019, 4.7. 2020, 2.62. 2021, the year we just got done with, 8.4%. And we estimate next year's escalation at 6.6. These three sources, you can get onto their websites. They're not always the easiest to decipher, but you can get in and learn about construction escalation and how each one of them measures that.
And Tom, in your notes, I just want to make sure this wasn't missed. The 2021 being based on 3/4 of what was known, right?
Yes, 2021 Q4, October, November, December has not been reported as of the 4th. So we used an average of the first 3 quarters for that, for the 2021. And 2020 is an estimate based on historical and talking with our various industry partners, construction companies, etc. Each one of these indexes come from these are independent, industry recognized sources. And here's some other notes about the 2021 based on the average of the 3 quarters, and a note concerning 2022.
Looks like we have a hand raised.
What's that?
Looks like we have a hand raised.
Oh,
Yeah, just
go ahead.
Tom,
Yes.
tell us more about the 6.6, because of all the numbers on this page, that's the one that counts. So you say industry partners. Who are the industry partners? When you say historical averages, are you talking about the numbers right above it? Why don't you talk more about that 6.6 so we can understand that number?
Okay, the 6.6 is when we look at the numbers above, we in our industry partners at Skanska Construction and Cornerstone General Contractors are the two contractors I've talked with. They felt that 2020 they would put between a 6.5% and a 7% on their deals for estimating what they would expect to see in 2022. Notably, they say we do not know for sure. Nobody would have guessed that 2020 would have been down at 2.62, and they're in the wild swing to 2021 at 8.4. So notably, yes, 6.6 is an estimate. It is a guess, an educated guess, and it is the best estimate for the information we have at this time. And we'll be able to touch, there's going to be something that'll supplement that a little bit more as I get into the numbers a little bit more, Jonathan.
Okay, it didn't sound like you used the numbers above. It only sounds like you used the information from Skanska and your other.
No, and they fall.
The numbers above are average out to 5.
Yeah. Well, it's using information, historical information in the numbers. Those numbers above are historical, but I mean, we could drop that to 5, but that would go against what our partners, were recommending. So we didn't strictly go with exactly what they said, nor did we strictly go with the average of the numbers above.
I think it's important because when we do average it out to 5.5, whatever it is, and then we have conversations with those partners, we think, yeah, we would rather be a little bit more in that 6.6 range, considering where we're at currently. So it is an approximation, an estimate. It is slightly higher than the average of those, but we did consider the average.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, then, and again, some of this is a little number heavy. Some of you will appreciate it. Others may gloss over it. Taking the 100, this is the construction cost escalation calculator that we put together, and it's compounding year over year, something important to know. The $120 million was the initial project estimate done in 2015. It had 2 years of construction escalation built into it. You see that it's still 120 million when the bond passed in April of 2016. 2017 was when we expected to start construction. We did not. 2018, using those same numbers from before, from the previous sheet, you can see how this grows. This calculator down here is the same thing. It just shows it a little more linearly, and shows it comes up with the same number, but those are using those numbers. And this year, 2020, is the 6.6, which is year 5 of the delay, which is this year of 2022, when we expect to start construction. Then another one of the items that was we needed to show you was where the additional scope of work was being added to the project. This is the escalated number of 156 million, escalated to the start. The City of Issaquah parking garage is a requirement for the City of Issaquah that was put onto the project after we passed the bond. It was something we had not anticipated when we put the original estimate together. We had not anticipated the amount of right-of-way work that the City of Sammamish is requiring. Remember, the land is in the City of Issaquah, the frontage is in the City of Sammamish, and there were some politics there, and we had to do some very significant frontage improvements. East Lake Sammamish, or 228th in front of the school, in areas will be 6 lanes wide with bike paths and sidewalks. During the process, initially, in order to help be a good neighbor with the PPUA, the Providence Point folks, we ended up enlarging the buffers that surround the site on the 3 sides. That meant that we pulled everything into the center of the site, creating more of an island where all of the program, the school, the football fields, the baseball fields, parking garage, everything had to be on. It caused, by tightening up the site like that, you create an island. There's a lot of retaining walls, additional plantings in those buffers, all sorts of things that were not anticipated that have increased the cost estimated. The cost of permitting in the City of Issaquah has grown tremendously over the last 5-6 years. Right now, we're estimating an additional $3.3 million in permitting costs, making E17, the elementary school that was going to be on the site. We want to make it pad ready, meaning that in the future, when that school gets to be needed, we have a pad ready school that is ready to build on. And there's a lot of items that go into making that pad, that portion of that pad ready for construction at the time, and make that. We feel it's good planning now. Construction does not get cheaper. we're better off to do what we can now to make that future project less expensive. And then this is $10 million for its additional hedge for unknowns. As you know, we're still in the pandemic. We have supply chain issues, unforeseen inflation, cost escalation. It's approximately 5% of the construction cost is that hedge. Then we go to the third proceeds, need, and shortfall calculation. You had your original, we had the original 120 million funds from the 2016 bond. We had $34 million from elementary 17. That comes to, we had proceeds, we have $154 million from the 2016 bond. The revised project estimate was $198 million, is $198 million. That leaves a difference of $44 million that we are requesting in the 2022 levy to complete the construction of high school 4. Any questions on all of that? I don't know how much time we really have.
And Jonathan has one. Yep.
Just a quick question. Was the $154 million in funds we had in, and were they invested?
That I don't know if we invested those dollars or not. That's, as I say, above my pay grade.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, when we do, so we don't necessarily sell all the bonds at once. When we have the 533 million or whatever, those are sold as projects come on, right? So they only start accumulating that interest, and quite frankly, it's an extremely low amount that we get because we are required to invest it with the pool. So they are, but they have not been accumulating interest since 2016. That would not, we haven't, we don't sell them all at once. We sell them as we need the cash. Or,
yeah. That helps. I was just looking to see if there was an offset. Thanks.
Yeah.
Don.
Can you explain a little bit about the parking garage? It says it's $6 million for structured parking. So what were we going to do before that requirement? We were just going to not have a parking garage? And I mean, it seems like that's be something you could fight if we already passed it, but I guess we weren't permitted. I just want to know what that means.
Yeah, structured parking is a new requirement by the city of Issaquah. It is all commercial sites will have structured parking, and the city, it's at 50%. If in the old days, what we would do, we would just have a large asphalt or concrete parking lot that everyone would, like at the rest of our schools. The 2 schools that got caught in this are Cougar Mountain Middle School, which has a parking garage, and the high school, and any future schools that are built in the city of Issaquah for now, as long as that holds. And it was something that we had not planned on doing, and structured parking is expensive to do compared to flat asphalt parking lots.
Thanks, Tom. And I see 2 more hands up, and let's cap it at those 2 so we can end just 10 minutes late. We'll go Martin, and then we'll go Lisa, and then we'll wrap up. And don't worry, folks, we will come back to this document at our next meeting, because that is our final wood to chop, so to speak, would be the capital levy. But Martin Buckley, you're up.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this is going to be the contentious wood to chop next time. Can you give us some guidance and some thought on what you're looking for in the next work session? Because I would hate to come in with this as the only thing we're considering, or whether you're looking for additional input, because you know, back to Mr. O'Donoghue's pointy conversation earlier, I think we ought to come in well informed and ready to work, rather than having, a relatively short time to digest and vote. So some guidance on what you think is happening next, please.
Martin, you want to take that one?
Well, as you were saying that, I'm wondering if there's some communication we can do in the interim between now and the meeting. And I mean, I think if you have suggestions on what would be helpful, other than that, we can put our heads together and communicate that out in advance. I know that one of the suggestions was to have the topic of a breakout in advance so that we can be prepared. Yeah, I'm not sure.
And Lisa, I see a hand up.
So this is probably for the next meeting, but just future discussion knowledge. Is there a likelihood that E17 is not going to ever be built? Is there a scenario where that doesn't happen and 15 million is spent pouring a pad that never gets used? Because when you read all the community correspondence that was provided, it's all Providence Point people all complaining about E17. And if they're a large voting block, I just wonder if, I understand it's cheaper now to pour the pad or do whatever it is than it is in 2 years or 4 years or whatever. It might cost double, who knows? But I'm wondering if there's even a 10% chance that E17 doesn't get built, is that something that helps make this more palatable, is removing of something that might not happen? So just for future.
Like, I can say even though we are still seeing some lower enrollment numbers at the elementaries, that we expect those to rebound and the need for that school to be there. So I given percentages, maybe I can't do that right now, but I can tell you that the need and the need to build will be there, that we anticipate anyway.
And look at the struggles in finding a parcel of land to build the current elementary schools. That was hard.
All right, and I said I was going to cap it at 2. Dana, if you've got a quick one, you can bring us home here and then we'll wrap. We are about 13 minutes over, which I always like to end on time if at all possible. But if you've got a quick one, Dana, floor is yours.
Can I just recommend that we separate the technology piece from the building piece for discussion? And I know that they're one measure, but maybe for voting and everything, we separate those two for the future meetings.
Thank you. We'll definitely take that we'll take that note down as we plan for that piece.
And I would encourage any questions or clarifications anybody needs. If it's possible, communicate those ahead of time before the next meeting, so we have time to prepare and gather answers and make the most out of that next meeting.
All right. Thanks so much, folks. Good work tonight. You got into a lot of very deep conversations. I appreciate just the level of engagement of this group so much. We still have a lot of work to do, though. We still have 2 meetings left. And I think if you look at the themes that have come out of our breakout sessions, some of the conversations that we're going to have over the capital levy, those seem to be the themes that were coming out that folks really wanted to focus on and had a lot of questions and concerns over the most. So that's what our last 2 meetings are really going to be focused on. We went 15 minutes over. All apologies. I will do my best as facilitator to keep us within before 8 p.m. next time. Stay dry out there. It's very rainy. Have a great week and a half, and I'll see everybody at our next meeting. Thanks so much, everybody.